You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where, like all sane and rational people, we are absolutely raging that Ben Stokes has dared to make cricket entertaining. I'm Jack Hope, and I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. One run. Max, what do you have to say about that?
Apoplectic with rage, Jack. Can't believe it. How dare we? I mean, it was a pretty exciting game, wasn't it? But I can't help but feel England kind of blew it, having won it about 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think if you're ever in a situation where you win a match by one run, I've been in a few. I played a lot of cricket and I've watched a lot of cricket, so I've been on the winning end of this. Hey, 2019 World Cup final, yeah. You never really feel like you totally deserved to win. I think whereas if you lose by a run, and similarly being on the opposite end of that, you almost always feel like something cheated you out of victory.
Yeah.
Like, that should have been a wide at the end, or how did the umpire not give Ben Stokes out LBW? Like it's there's always, or like, unbelievable that there's a boundary count back rule. Like it's always there's something that rankles when you lose such a by such a fine margin.
Of it, isn't it? Between winning in the last minute and losing in the last minute, that's all there is to it, I suppose.
But I think if you do win, then you generally think you got away with one. I'm sure New Zealand do, but fair play. If you didn't guess, we will be talking about England v New Zealand on this podcast. We'll also be looking forward to England travelling to Bangladesh for an extremely relevant ODI series. In part 2, we'll be celebrating the greatest show on turf. The Australian women's cricket team. And we will wrap up the show with a little look forward to the third battering of the Australian men's cricket team by India. In Torre. I think we asked how to say this. I'm still not sure whether it's in Tor or in Torre, but apparently it's more of a T sound, not like a full T, than a D. We'll see. If you're probably much closer. Yeah, if our pronunciation is terrible on that, fair play.
Sorry,
we could have done more research. But that's
no, we don't have the necessary glottal stops to be able to carry it out correctly, Jack. That's all it is to it. It's a physiological problem.
It's an interesting show, this one, from my point of view. Normally, I do quite a lot of notes, and I always do it in one document. A little look behind the curtain if you are a listener. And I delete the document or everything in the document and then put new notes in. So just before this show, I deleted all my notes. I had 2.5 pages of notes for the last show I did, which was a 30-minute wrap up of the last India Oz test. This one I've got 10 lines for 3 quite big topics. So we'll see how it go. Max, do you want to talk about the main things that happened in England v New Zealand? It was a pretty packed test, but we should set the scene somewhat as we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, it had everything, didn't it? All the way throughout those 5 days. It was an advert for 5-day tests. It was an advert for a bit of Bazball. It was an advert for not enforcing the follow-on. It had everything. But ultimately, what happened is Root is back. Kane Williamson is back. Harry Brook is a bowling all-rounder now. And as we said, there was some not controversy, but discussion about whether the follow-on should be enacted. And then everyone and Captain Hindsight came out and told you all why it was a terrible idea. The answer being because England lost, and that's how
by one run.
Yeah, that's how these discussions work. But there was a 226 run lead. England forced the follow-on. New Zealand fought back really well on what probably were the best times for batting on this pitch. Apparently, it has behaved like this before, the drop-in pitch at the Bay Oval. But
is it a drop-in?
Apparently, that's what I read on Twitter. Yeah, but it was essentially Kane Williamson. Really good performance from him after he's had a bit of a struggle of late, and England were set 258 to win, and they lost the plot, completely recovered, won the game, lost the plot, recovered, won the game, lost the game. That's my summary of the fourth innings.
I'll be honest. I think the fourth thing is you can sort of summarize it by like pointing out that basically everyone in England went to bed at lunch. Like only the real nutters stayed up, I think, till 3 a.m. to watch what should have been a formality. I think Wimvis, when I turned it off, I mean, I was obviously working yesterday, so I wasn't stuck to 3 a.m. for what effectively was a dead game. I think it had England at 91%. Another victory for the all-seeing eye that is Wimvis. But it did seem like it was a bit of a foregone conclusion. I think at that point Root was batting extremely well. It was on 70 odd balls. It was exactly a run a ball, I think, at lunch. And Stokes was on one leg, but didn't look like he was going to get out. And it was, what do they need? 80 at that point, 85 at that point.
That was the other thing I forgot to mention. It had Ben Stokes and a Herculean effort against his own body.
Yeah,
like all good Test matches.
There are a hell of a lot of talking points in this. We have the conclusion, Neil Wagner finding some form at last in this series, and knocking over the England tail. We've got Joe Root being amazing, but everyone's still sort of blaming him for England losing. We've got Harry Brook with another 190. We've got Michael Bracewell's hilarious running. We've got declarations. We've got was the second last baller wide. And they're all my notes. So which one of them would you like to talk about first?
Oh, should we start with Harry Brook?
Yeah, right. So here's my take on that. He's very, very good. And I think England would have won if Joe Root hadn't run him out. Are
we blaming Joe Root for this?
David Gower seemed to, and I'm going to defer to David Gower, I think, on this. My understanding, roughly,
the impression I got from David Gower was that he thought Harry Brook should have screamed at him no, because I mean, yes, Joe Root did set off, and it wasn't his call because it was behind the wicket and he didn't have a good view of it, and that's why it didn't go very well, because he thought a slip had dived and not collected it cleanly, and actually Michael Bracewell just picked it up and thrown it at the stumps, and they were trying to run a quick single to second slip, which anyone who's played cricket can probably tell you isn't a great idea.
I got one run out last year from first slip, and I can tell you, first-hand experience that you don't you don't run to first slip.
But I mean, Harry Brook's got a good view of this. It's his call. He has every right to tell Joe Root to get back in his crease, and it would have been fine. I can't help but feel that Harry Brook was sort of not paying attention.
Hell of an innings in the first dig.
Maybe he was knackered.
Because
he obviously he scored 189, and then he had to bowl. I mean, that's something
is that question.
We need to cover that, the bowling. What's going on with that action?
Look, he obviously spent too much time batting, didn't he? He didn't learn how to bowl properly, and it was like a period in the game where it actually did look like New Zealand were going to properly set a total, didn't it? And then obviously they collapsed at 5 for 28 to wrap up that innings, including the aforementioned hilarious run out. Brook is a phenom. I mean, he has all of the naysayers and the Shubman Gill fans out there will say that Brook has had some very easy pitches to bat on in his first 5-6 matches as a Test player, and it's a fair comment to make. So have a lot of other people in history, though, and very few of them have got like 1,000 runs after 7 matches. It kind of goes from strength to strength, doesn't it? Like it's
and it's not just about the runs, is it? It's the way they're scored.
It's the speed swagger.
They're scored again. They're scored with the array of shots. I mean, and I say if you look at the wagon wheel, it is 360. It's completely 360. Apart from behind the wicketkeeper, it's amazing.
Do you want just the raw numbers for Harry Brook in his 6 tests? 6 tests, batted 10 times. One of those times, he was run out without facing a ball. So, factor that into this equation as well.
Not good for the average.
809 runs, 10 innings again. Average of 80.9 if you're not too quick at maths. Top score 186. 400s, 350s. He's striking at 98.77 max. That's faster than Virat Kohli in ODIs. It's faster than
half the Bangladesh team in T20s.
Yeah. I mean, like that gets you into the middle order of the Bangladesh team. It's absolutely bonkers. I heard. I saw a tweet from somebody saying he only averaged half of that in Sydney grade cricket when he went over as an overseas. Like, how good do you want to be at the sport? Like, it is preposterous. And it does feel like there's sort of nothing he can't do as well. I'm really looking forward. I guess next challenge
It's
for him is
very,
the
very
IPL.
exciting. I could only imagine Joe Root was just a bit miffed at being, outshone. He got his 100. Harry Brook made him look like a mug anyway. So I'll show you. I'll put you back in your box, my friend.
It was like a tragic twist to the bromance, wasn't it? Like they've been. I don't know if you saw. Like there was a great montage that went up of them celebrating batting together. Obviously, like a ridiculous partnership in the first innings. But what were they? England 23 for 3, and then they were 300 and odd for 4. Both of them got tons. They were scoring runs for fun. Brook was smacking it everywhere. Root was like pretty much only playing reverse laps. It was carnage, and there's loads of snaps of them celebrating, and then like the pictures, obviously, of the disappointment and the betrayal.
Guess what the thumbnail's going to be.
Yeah, it was good. It was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty bad from Root to do that, but yeah, amazing for Brook. Root as well. We've talked so much about Root on this podcast. I don't think we need to go into him in loads of detail, but it was.
It just shows that everything people have been saying is nonsense, isn't it? About where does he see himself in this team? Is it right? Is he struggling? Is he confused about his role? No, he's really good.
Yeah, he's good. He did get out, and that will be part of the narrative now. You know, he only scored 245 runs for the loss of only one Joe Root, but I suppose 2 if you include Brook in that.
Yeah.
Still
I mean,
you
could argue that the shot he played to get out immediately after Ben Stokes himself had got out was inadvisable, and that maybe he could have consolidated. But once again, that's just hindsight. And you could equally argue at the time, if he carries on the way he was going, which was attacking the short ball and scoring lots of runs off attacking the short ball, it puts the pressure right back on New Zealand and kind of negates any momentum they got from that wicket. So you can completely see why he carried on playing that way. And never mind.
Yeah, and then we go. So we've done the good points. There we probably should discuss the declaration, Max. What was your take on this? So
I'm a bit biased because I quite like follow-ons.
Okay, explain your thinking, and then I guess I'll take the opposite view.
Well, I guess mainly it's just that they're quite good fun. There's not
okay.
I don't have a. I think they're very situational. I mean, the declaration itself, I suppose you could argue was a bit questionable. But I mean, what are you going to get with Anderson back? I mean, the question is, like, Joe Root's still out there, and you might as well tell Joe Root to swing and try and get an extra.
Oh, are you going all the way back to the declaration of the first? Right. So let's go back to that then.
Yeah.
I think that my thinking, like, about the various decisions he's made. First of all, the declaration at 435 for 8. I didn't really have any problem with that at all. It gave you like a mini session before lunch.
Yeah.
As you point out, England could have eked out a few more runs, so I don't think it mattered that much. There is a track record on this pitch of teams doing better in the third and fourth innings. It's better to bowl earlier on. It's probably better to give your bowlers 2 short, sharp sessions before and after lunch with a new ball as well.
Yeah.
Than it is to give them kind of 1.5. Especially if you sort of factor in that Stokes probably wasn't going to bowl, so England really only had 3 seamers. So you get an extended blast out of Robinson, Broad, and Anderson, and it kind of
and the openers have to start twice. As well,
you do have to remember, added to this, they're playing with a Kookaburra ball which swings early and then stops swinging. So you really do want to maximise you do want your best seam bowlers bowling the most overs while that ball's new. And I think it was a good way of manufacturing that.
Yeah.
And 435 is quite a lot of runs. Like 435 for 8 declared, nothing wrong with that. Then New Zealand get 209.
Thing is, though, Jack, if it had been 436 for 8, we would have tied. And it was
this is it.
37 for 8, would have won the game.
If you want to go down this path, we can do every single ball of the game.
I think for me, all I can say is that all the evidence points to the declaration was designed to get Joe Root's average above 50 and nothing more.
Okay, so that's by the by. They get 209. And then England asked New Zealand to bat again. Now, I think this was based on a weather forecast. So day 1 and 2, I think there were a couple of sessions washed out.
Yeah, they lost quite a bit of time.
Because of rain. They may, I don't know whether they got the wrong weather forecast. Well, obviously, they did get the wrong weather forecast because what they thought was going to happen didn't happen.
Well, weather forecasts are notoriously accurate.
I think it is a reasonably poor decision to enforce the follow-on overall. I think it isn't an absolutely colossal lead. New Zealand are at home in conditions which are going to improve or are at least not going to deteriorate much. And New Zealand have got a hell of a good batting lineup. Like it's not, they aren't the force that they were 2 years ago when they won the World Test Championship. But a large part of the reason for that is that there's no Kyle Jamieson, there's no Trent Bolt. Neil Wagner's bowling 5 or 10 kilometers an hour slower than he used to.
Ross Taylor's retired.
Ross Taylor is retired. Yeah. It's
BJ Watling's retired.
Well, yeah, but I think it's actually the case of Ross Taylor and Watling. To some extent, they've been covered off. The Grandhomme is arguably a bigger loss, I think, for this team than those two, because Taylor was coming to the end of his career. And who's replaced him? What, Devon Conway? I mean, you're
Tom
probably going
Blundell.
to take that.
And
Tom Blundell's come in, So I don't think you'd worry about that. And even to an extent, Daryl Mitchell coming in from a batting point of view has done a really good job replacing the Grandad's overs. Yeah, maybe not with the ball, sure, but it's not.
It's definitely the bowling where they're significantly lighter than they have been. But,
so like from a follow-on point of view, you are giving them a chance, I think, to get back into the game. Now, if you're England, like, are you worried about the weather and you keep winning and you just think you're going to win? Like maybe that those facts don't really come to the front of your mind, if you like, and I can see that. But I do think that the lead, 226, is not a particularly. It's not a particularly large lead.
It's not. I did actually have a little look. I wanted to find some data on follow-ons when it's been enforced and it's not. The average deficit for a victorious enforcing of the follow-on is 303, which is quite a lot higher than 226, obviously. And actually the side that enforces the follow-on wins about 79% of the time. If you don't enforce the follow-on, that jumps up to about 86. So evidence suggests that overall maybe it's not worth doing anyway, unless you've got a particularly big lead. Obviously, there's issues with like sample size. But the other thing is that the average deficit for teams that win when not enforcing the follow-ons are a lot lower. I mean, partly that's just because of being further ahead means you're more likely to do it, but it sort of draws out maybe it was a little ambitious with the I
think it was a little bit ambitious, for sure. I think the other thing, so like if you think about when do you want to enforce a follow-on, the answer really is when there's absolutely no chance of you losing, and time is a major factor. And I think when you say was it 79% of the time teams win when they enforce follow-on, I bet a lot of those games are rain affected.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
Or they're like extremely high scoring games where it's like 600.
Yeah, there's a lot of 580, 600s
and there's like just not that much time left in the game, full stop. And I think this is like a really clear example of a situation where there is loads and loads of time. You're going to get a really good use of the pitch. You're going to be able to bat the other team out of the game. You're going to be able to exhaust them.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to rest your 40-year-old strike bowler and your 35-year-old
Well, I think
strike bowl partner.
the key thing for me in that is that obviously Ben Stokes would have had an inkling that his knee was not up to bowling.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I would question the decision as much as anything else. I don't mind being aggressive, and England have caused problems to New Zealand all through, in every batting innings up to this point with their bowling. So you can see that they might have thought, well, we can get them for 300, 350 and knock it off fairly quickly. But with Ben Stokes not being able to bowl, that did have a massive impact on what England were able to do. It meant Jack Leach had to send down 60 odd overs, and
well though, Leach, I think
did bowled nicely. But yeah, I think that's where I would lay the most criticism for the decision.
I think the only way, I think the only way you can defend this, I don't think England. I think there's like an angle on this, isn't there? That this is the end. I mean, like there were like 10 articles today written about how this is the end of Bazball, and and like this is sort of luck coming around for England. Like England, they've won 9 of their last 10 matches after winning 1 of their last 17 matches before that. And
they were attempting to do something that they'd not done since, like, I don't know when it was 1884 when they played 2 tests against South Africa, which was to win all their games over the winter, 7 test matches in a row. It was all sorts of nonsense on the line.
Yeah, and that I think if you're taking that angle that somehow England are lucky to have won those matches, right? There's a degree to which that is true. There have been a couple of fortuitous injuries. Johnny Bairstow's coming was unexpected, let's say. But like you also have to acknowledge that England aren't winning so many of those games if they aren't playing this way. They just fundamentally are not beating New Zealand in those matches. You can talk all you want about how the ball didn't really move around and it wasn't particularly English conditions and New Zealand had injuries. Talking last summer here, do all you want about that. England do not win those tests unless Johnny Bairstow is blasting 140 off 100 balls. Like it just the whole tactic means that they win those matches. South Africa a little bit later in the year, some juicy decks. They might have won those. Either way. But then they go to Pakistan. They win 3-0 in Pakistan. Pakistan have played 3, 6, 8 matches at home in the last 6 months. They have lost 4, drawn 4. They lost 3 of those 4 to England. The other 5 matches, there was 1 result. England beat them 3-0. Like, they just categorically do not win those games. And they do not win, particularly the first test, unless they take quite an unconventional approach to making that declaration, which looked semi-suicidal on a very flat wicket. Turns out to be absolutely bang on. They win in the dying of the light right at the end of that test.
Still suicidal.
Like you can't. I think if your takeaway from this is that this is luck coming around for England, and this is a slightly flawed way of playing cricket, coming back to eventually bite England. I think you are so far away from the mark with your analysis there, because quite clearly, like loads of things they are trying are working. However, I will say on this declaration that I think you're pushing the envelope a bit too far. Well, the follow on, yeah. I think you are pushing the envelope a little bit too far when you make New Zealand bat again there, and that actually some of the conventional wisdom around when to enforce the follow on and when not to enforce the follow on still holds true, even if you are playing, in quotes, Bazball. Like, I think I don't really blame them.
Well, if anything,
like, you don't get to this situation if you're England if you don't like blow a load of conventions out the water. If you're not like, well, we're just going to try and score at 6 and over.
If anything, not enforcing the follow on is more suited to the way Bazball set out, because one of the issues
you would think
about not enforcing the follow on people have is that they're concerned about not knowing what target to set, how long to bat for, running out of time to bowl the team out. If you go out and play like England do and score at 5, 6 runs and over, you can bat for half a day. You can bat for a day and leave yourself 2 days to bowl at a side who need to score 500 to win, and it will still work.
Yeah. The other thing I say is if you are one of those people that's sort of like told you so about this. Like, God, you must live a miserable life. Are you not enjoying like what England are bringing to the table? Like the they're revolutionizing the format. They're making the format relevant. They're making the format, frankly, interesting. The Pakistan test that didn't involve England was some of the dullest test matches ever played. Some of the matches at base and reserve in Wellington in the last decade have been tediously dull, like really tediously dull. It's not great cricket. England turn up and it's a one-run victory. I mean, it doesn't really matter which way it goes.
It's almost what Stoke said at the end, wasn't it? It was like, I don't care. We lost. It was a good game, wasn't it? It was fun.
The chase against India last summer, like that was an absolutely cracking test match with an absolutely unbelievable chase against like a really good bowling. These things, they don't happen if you don't have people pushing the envelope like this. And they screw up the declaration. And if you're a dyed in the wool sad England supporter, you might be shouting at your podcast player right now and saying I'm missing the point. It's all about winning. But like I can tell you for a fact, England have not won 10 of 12 matches if they're not playing this way. So it is a loss.
And you have to remember that England won 1 in 15 before they started playing like this, with not far off the same players.
No, look, Brook is a transformational player. Bairstow has been a transformational player. It is the same bowling attack though. Like it's
will be for another 20 years.
It is exactly the same bowling attack. Having Stokes back in there, Stokes was in and out the side over that time. It's made a difference. But they're still carrying around Zach Crawley. Like Ollie Pope's still sort of occasionally scoring runs and occasionally being really, really frustrating. There's still some big flaws in this team, and they're winning a hell of a lot, and they're playing like the most entertaining Test cricket. Period. There just hasn't been more entertaining cricket than this, I don't think. Max, we should also give a little bit of credit to Neil Wagner. I think might be the last time we see him play against England. Absolute character, I think, and I think it really sort of symbolises that era, if you like, that generation of Kiwi cricketers. A very hard nosed, but seems to be a lovely guy. And I felt happy for him that he got to claim the last wicket after he'd taken a little bit of tap over the Test matches so far.
Took a couple of important catches as well, and people were writing him off, weren't they? They said he was gone. Oh, his pace is down. He's not got it anymore. As it's the end of Neil Wagner, so he came back and showed them what he had. And really, even if the pace still wasn't quite up at what it has been in the past. Not that he's ever been, necessarily expressed. It's just all about hitting the deck hard and directing your short balls well, and he did that really well. That left arm round the wicket angle really caused a few problems for the England batters. And nice, it was nice to see. You can see how much it meant to him. Those celebrations were excellent. They were proper testosterone fueled roars of joy at getting people out. The Ollie Pope one was fun. You could see he'd been a little pissed off at the old stepping away and dispatching him over fine leg in the first innings. So nice for him to get some revenge, and nice moment for him.
And to round off part one, we've got a little bit over, so we'll be very quick here. England are going to Bangladesh for some ODIs tomorrow. They've sort of named the real bowling attack. And then a bunch of guys who are fringe batters. Yeah,
Butler's there, Moeen's there.
Yeah, I suppose Roy's there. That will happen. I don't think anyone's super excited about it.
No, it's the timing's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean,
it's at 6 a.m.
Yeah, and I'm going to be more interested in Australia than England playing Bangladesh.
I saw this was like just the only interesting thing I've got to say about this was a bit of a bone of contention on Sky Sports, wasn't it? Whether England would be on the main event or whether it would be Australia v India. And it is England. They're the main event, apparently, according to Sky. But you can find, I think,
isn't Australia India on BT? It's in India, isn't it? Of course, no, it would be.
No, it is on BT. It is on BT. So you can go to BT Sport if you're in the UK. I don't know what I'm talking about, and watch the cricket there. Max, we're going to take a break, but before we do, our coverage of the New Zealand series was sponsored by the Cricket Podcast Coffee. Well, we're going to put a link for this in the show notes. If you're a coffee connoisseur, as we are, you can hook yourself up with some Cricket Podcast Coffee. Look at that. That's us on the front of a coffee packet. And
cartoon us. Really, we don't look like that in real life.
it fueled it. Well, there's a picture of us if you're watching on YouTube. It fueled our coverage of New Zealand, and it will be fueling my coverage of India tomorrow morning. So, thanks very much. We're going to take a break. Not going to have a coffee, so I'm recording this in the evening, but we will have a beverage.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.